I'm all in my feels, man, because I put a lot of heart and soul into this book over the past 2 years. But at the end of the day, this is my masterpiece. This is my life. I let the public into the story of the situation that they didn't know. And I was vulnerable. And I think, well, I'm just so happy because anybody who's read the book, our first review, the press, everybody is just floored by what I was able to put together. So I'm really happy to be in front of you talking about it right now.
And now, before you did start working on this, were there other memoirs that you were looking to as like inspiration or things that you were able to take maybe advice from or how you wanted to structure it?
Um, I think it definitely was a bucket list item for me to become an author.
Okay.
But not just become any author. I really wanted to release a celebrated book that that helped millions of people. And
Mm,
I thought about releasing this book while I was in prison. And I was in it's definitely a dark place for me, but at the same time, I had overcome addiction. And at this particular point, I was a number of years sober, and so many people are not able to overcome addiction. And if you read my book, addiction was just one of the many obstacles that I had overcame.
yeah.
And so I felt that if I was able to really put down and articulate how I recovered from addiction and all these obstacles, that I'd be able to help a lot of people. And that was just one of the main focuses for me.
And when you did start to really work on it, were there moments you were maybe dreading revisiting? Like, obviously there's a lot of dark and
Was.
stuff in here.
Yeah,
What were you when you did, start to talk
yeah,
about a specific part where you're like,
yeah.
I'm not ready to dig into this.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a very deep book. And it's I think it's a book that you don't expect to get from the situation. And that's why
Yeah.
I'm so proud to release it because I put my heart and soul into it. And there's many instances where it was really tough to get through. And I remember when I first embarked on this journey, I was like, oh man, how am I gonna do this? I mean, this is my whole lifetime that I'm gonna have to articulate and get across to the reader. And I took it really just one day at a time, like my recovery,
Mm.
and I put my all into every single day that I worked on this book. And at the end of the 2 years, I could probably shed a tear right now about the cover of the book and the title and the subtitle and the content and how much everyone loves it and how much press we're getting right now from it. So, I'm all in my feels right now for sure.
And how hard was it too? Because obviously you would, there are moments that I'm sure were hazy, your memory are not, it's not exactly as full as probably you would like it to be. How
Yeah.
how does that make it difficult when you are kind of looking back at some of these years when you weren't 100%?
When my wife was reading the book, she's like, I cannot believe you were able to do a whole book. She said, because most of it, and I admitted that I was high,
Yeah.
a majority of it. Obviously, you start to get to the comeback story later in the book. And I'm 8 years clean and sober now. But before that, I was my own pharmacy, my own chemist, and I'm lucky to be in front of you right now. I mean, in the book, I write that I always had hundreds and hundreds of pills on me at
Yeah.
all times. I mean, it was just really insanity that I'm so grateful to be in front of you right now. But I did question that. But at the end of the day, the end product speaks for itself. It's a beautifully articulated book, and myself and the co-writer worked endlessly to get across a beautiful read for everyone.
Yeah. And were you concerned at all when it came to talking about MTV, Jersey Shore specifically? Because obviously you get into contract
Yes,
negotiations, how much you were paid. You're
yes,
detailing the lengths they're going through to
yes,
kind of try and keep you away from drugs. Just how
yes.
did you approach that aspect
Yeah.
of it?
I definitely was a little worried because I've been an employee of MTV for, I mean, it's got to be a decade probably straight, but on and off for
Yeah.
15 years. Um, so I did walk that fine line of telling the truth, but at the same time having total accountability on what had happened during that time period. And at the whole time while all this was going on, season after season, MTV and the executives, and Sally Ann would pull me aside and be like, "Are you okay? It doesn't look like it. Your behavior is huge red flags." And I'd be like, "No, I'm okay. I'm okay." And as you read in the book, I was a menace. I was
Yeah.
a menace. And they will admit that to you. That I'm so lucky to be alive today, during the filming of the biggest reality show in the country at the time.
Yeah.
So it's a very jarring read for everyone, and it's very shocking and entertaining. You're gonna laugh, you're gonna cry, but at the end of the day, you're gonna be inspired by a really, really good comeback story.
Mm. And I was shocked just seeing how like sneaky you were at getting some of your drugs. Like you made it part of your GTL routine, picking it up at tanning salons in Miami. You had to plan ahead when you were filming in Italy. Just for MTV, do you think there was a point where they were like, we can't bring him back? Do you think they were ever really close to pulling the plug?
I think 100%. I think season after season they tried to at least get some physical evidence so they could sit me down and be like, "Listen, we got
Mm,
you red-handed." I think they really were trying. And if you read the book, it was a game of cat and mouse
yeah,
every season. It was Mission Impossible. I was pushing the envelope on every single thing that you can do on this juggernaut of reality show for MTV. And I think when it came to around season 5, they sent the ultimatum. They were like, the writing is on the wall.
yeah.
He's escaped from set probably almost a dozen times, literally a dozen times, because it was about
Jeez.
2 to 3 times a season. And
Mm,
eventually they put it in my contract at a particular point. They said if Mike escapes, we're allowed to penalize him monetarily.
mm,
I still escaped multiple times in season 5. And once that happened, they sent the ultimatum and they said, if you don't return to set on season 6, the situation that we know and love from season 1, pretty much you're not welcome.
yeah.
And I took that very seriously. And in the book I write, I'm surprised that I was able to take it that far. And
Right.
I was happy to go to rehab.
And now you just talked about all your escape attempts and your high speed chases. I think there are quite a few of them in the book, but I want to first give props to Lauren for one of the ones you mentioned. That is just the way she just came chased after you when you were trying to get out of detox at one point.
Yes. My wife has, if you read the book, you will see that my wife is my guardian angel, and
Yeah.
she has saved my life many times. I'm talking, 2, 3, 4 times at least throughout that book. But the time that you're mentioning, um, I mean, a long story short, I have met my match,
Yeah.
when it comes, and she's my soulmate. And I tried to escape during a detox attempt, and I jumped in my Lamborghini at the time, and my wife, or my then girlfriend, jumped in an M5, and both of them have upwards of 500 horsepower.
Yeah.
And we had a chase in the Jersey streets, and eventually got pulled over by a cop. And I told the cop behind me, I said, "There's a crazy fan behind me." When in reality, that was my girlfriend trying to save me.
Yeah.
And then he looked at me and he said, because my license plates at the time said Sitch one on them, Sitch two on
Yeah.
them. So he
Not
looked,
very incognito.
yeah, so he looked at me and he said, "Mike, that isn't that your car?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Isn't that your girlfriend?" I said, "Yeah, we're going home, officer." And at that particular point, the jig was up. And I think I always had a sense, somewhat of a sense at the end of things, when things almost got traumatic, not traumatic, but tragic. I had
Yeah.
this of being realistic and be like, okay, it's time to get some help.
Mm. And what does Lauren think of the book now that she's read it? Because obviously there's a lot that I'm sure is difficult for her to revisit
Yes,
or learn about too.
yes. Well, my wife, she read my book and she said she cried almost every chapter.
Yeah.
Um, and it was the first time that she read that her and my mom had saved my life when I
Mm.
had inadvertently or tried a drug that I never thought I was going to try, which I eventually tried, heroin at my lowest point, at my rock bottom, and she saved me as well as my mom did. Um, But
I
she,
can't imagine how they would react to hearing that.
yeah, my mom cried. My obviously my wife cried. My mother-in-law cried, and my father-in-law cried because they thought it was such a touching book, and they were very proud that I was able to put together such a beautiful book.
Mm. Now, there's another part in the book where you're talking about, you accepted your prison sentence. Vinny actually has, a few pages where he takes
Yeah, he
over
did
for a
that.
minute.
I was proud of that. Yeah.
How is that for you to read? Just seeing how he was basically praising you for having that positive attitude. And
Yeah.
I know you two had issues in the past that you got past after, you got sober. So
Yeah,
it has to
no.
be nice.
Once I became sober, the real situation had surfaced. The
Yeah.
real Mike Sorrentino, and those guys are my best friends, my brothers, my family today. But when I asked Vinny, because he went into the courtroom with me that day, um, I was very pleased to see what he wrote about me, and I think that I think the fans are going to like his view as well.
Now, have they read some of the other stories? Obviously, all the headlines are coming out about all the.
Yes, yes. Well, they definitely knew about those headlines because a couple of months ago, we had spoken about it, and myself, Vinny, and Paulie, we were like, I, we were talking about this, instance of an MVP orgy, and we had discussed, I think there was more than one, and we were just fooling around, and we had a little bit of a chuckle, and obviously they know it's in the book. It's obviously, I think it's also on, or not. I know it's on next season of Jersey Shore as well.
Ah, okay. I'm not necessarily surprised by it, having watched the show. I mean, are you surprised that it has made so many headlines?
You know what? I am definitely I am super pleased that these headlines are everywhere. Not necessarily these ones, but the book itself,
Right.
the press, it is everywhere. There's, let's just say, there's so many crazy stories, and I would say, uh, 8 out of 10 of them are all over the press. Everyone's picking it up, and that's what you want if you're about to release a book, for everyone to be talking about it.
Yeah. And were there things that you had to go back and forth about whether you're going to include or not? Or, are
I'm
there a lot of stories that could be in a second book that you saved that maybe
I
now's
mean,
not the right time?
I included, I think, like 95%, but I think
Okay.
I think on the second edition, which we may be getting to, I probably could add in a few more stories. And maybe some quotes and maybe some photos or whatever. But the popularity of this first edition, and we were number one on Amazon for a little bit, and our pre-sale, and it's going everywhere. We had a book signing the other day, or actually yesterday, it was sold out. So we are super in our feels right now that the public loves this book.
Oh, that's what we want. And just I think at one point in the book you mentioned you had realized you had spent more than obviously $500,000. That's just like a portion of, I think, your total of what you spent on drugs at a certain point. Just when you
Yeah,
see that number in front of you and knowing that's like kind of maybe even the low end of the number, what starts
it's,
going through your
yeah,
head?
yeah. It's definitely at the low end of the number. Where, I was, now that everybody was running all these headlines, and I had to, start to speak to people in the know, and they're like, it's probably north of six,
Yeah, that's just what you can quantify.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
exactly. But again, all I can do in this situation is sort of is be accountable and be
yeah,
truthful. I'm releasing a book. And I've made it to the other side of the life of excess, and the excess of parties and drugs and women. And I'm now 8 years clean and sober. I have two babies with one on
congrats.
the way, and a healthy, happy marriage. So I think it's very, very important to scream from the rooftops these positive stories, because if
Yeah.
Mike can do it, you can too.
And I think you even mentioned that you have people almost come up to you daily, like crying, knowing what you've been through and how maybe they've been in similar situations. Just what has been one of maybe, if there is a fan moment that has really touched you?
I think I almost cried about 10 to 15 times yesterday during my sold out book appearance, because so many people had come up to me, and they were either fighting addiction, or they were sober, or they were fighting cancer, or some sort of obstacle. And it is so, so touching for these fans and the readers that have read this book, that it's relatable enough for them that they're not giving up on themselves, and they're continuing to fight the good fight, and they believe my book, and that I'm an inspiring individual, so it's really special.
And just, yeah, I'm curious, what do you think the rest of the gang's going to think about it when they finally do read
You
it?
know what, I just everyone's getting all their books this week. I had the first set.
Okay.
I sent it to Cass this week. I sent it to Harvey this week. You guys are gonna get. I sent it to family this week. Everybody's getting it this week. Amazon, everyone is. So I'm super excited. I think they're going to be really proud of the book. And like I said, it is probably one of the craziest books you'll read. I don't think you'll be able to put it down once you start reading, but I think I did a great job of telling these amazing stories and being totally accountable. And I didn't need to besmirch anybody in this process. It's an amazing
Right.
book, and I don't think I said a bad word about anybody in this book. You know what I'm saying?
No, I was going
So
to say you mentioned a ton of other names, but the bad stuff's about you.
yeah, yeah, I took a total accountability on everything. And because I made it to the other side,
Yeah.
and anybody that is in this book, that I mentioned, it's positive. So I think they're going to be really happy, and proud of this book. I think it's going to be a movie. I really do. I think it's Wolf of Wall Street good, and I love Wolf of Wall Street, the movie. So I think it's that good.
Miles Teller, right? Is that who you said
Yeah,
you
yeah, maybe Miles Teller. But I think it's that good. So far, so good. I mean, we've hit a home run on every stage of this book. The a home run on the cover, the title, subtitle, the content, the press. So it's pretty. The next step is movie.
congrats on everything. It really is
Thank
great
you.
to see it. I got a little misty reading the end of the book, so
Oh
you
man,
hit the feels. You hit all the feels.
thank you so much.